I am Sue Blackburn. I am president of the Washtenaw Elementary Science Olympiad, for those of you who don't know me. And tonight's presentation is going to be handled by three of my fellow board members. But I would like to thank you all for coming out. This workshop was formulated in response to some meetings we had with your school head coaches. And one of the things that has been identified for the last couple of years are you guys are parents. You're not teachers for the most part. There might be a random teacher in the group, but you're parents. And how do you teach? You may know the subject matter, or you should be able to learn it because it's designed for elementary age kids. I would hope most of you could learn it. Um, but learning the subject material and then being able to teach a young child with a short attention span is where most of us adults get somewhat intimidated. um, so this workshop is to hopefully help address some of those issues and give you some ideas to make you successful coaches. So with me, I have Jane Levy. She's one of the board members. She is going to start the presentation with discussion on how to create a culture for learning. I have Zali Mustafa over there, another board member, and she's going to be talking about how to deal with disruptive children with short attention spans, some creative ideas for dealing with that particular population. And then Nancy Dean is going to wrap it up with some specifics for the events themselves. So hope this helps you guys, and we're really excited for this year's Science Olympiad. Thanks.
My name's Jane. I am a retired Ann Arbor public school teacher with 20 years of experience, and I was a scientist before that. So the first thing we're going to talk about building a culture for learning, so that when you're working with the kids, things will go smoothly and they will be learning things, and you probably will too. And you all really know, because your parents, most of you, there's a few people that are older sibs, that you were the first and the best teachers for your kids when they were really little, for sure. So it's not that far of a stretch. It's the question of having a smaller group that you're working on, and how to get them to engage in the material, and and get going with that. So um, the first thing in terms of the culture that I would like to say has to do with mistakes. Right away, when you talk to the kids, they need to learn that trying something and making a mistake is actually a learning opportunity. It's not a bad thing. So within the group, you model, and the other kids will model, and you talk about, if somebody says, well, I think this is why it happened, and it's really far out, listen carefully anyway and say, why do you think that? Or, like, let them express themselves. But and then if they are proven wrong, it's okay to say, well, that's how we learned that. I'm trying to think. There's a whole book in the libraries at the elementary schools about scientific mistakes that became big inventions. So it does happen. But kids, and Ann Arbor kids and Washtenaw kids, already at second grade have built into them a fear of that failure, that they don't want to put themselves out there, and tell what they're thinking if someone's going to laugh at it. So you have to really be a strong model with the group of kids that you're working with, that that's not going to happen. That they should feel free to say what they're thinking, and then if we need to discuss it back and forth, that's fine. Okay. And I made a note that says copycat school, just like when your kids were little and they were learning from you how to walk and talk and that kind of thing. The one of the things about being a learner is that they will model on you what it looks like to be a learner. So when you don't know the answer, you don't have to make something up. When you are learning, if something comes new to you because you haven't encountered that material before, it's okay to say, oh, let's look that up together. Or, I don't know that now, but I bet we could find out by, or even asking the kids, what do you think? Where could we find out our answer to this question? Okay, so copycat school. All right, start with high expectations. When you first meet with your group of kids, like I said, it's kind of like your own children, but the kids at this age, the Olympians, they will do almost anything for you because they want your approval. They want, to make you happy for what they're doing. A really important thing is to learn their names, use their names, and every time they come to a meeting and when they go away, you don't just sort of ignore them, but you make some kind of a ritual out of saying, "Oh, hello, Sally. How are you today?" Or what's going on, and maybe when they're going away too. So use their names. Make sure that the team knows each other's names. Sometimes some of you may be only coaching one grade level and they might be friends, best friends, but some of you may have mixed in groups. And a big part of what we want to do in Olympiad is to have the kids learn how to work as a team because, as future scientists, they need to know that. So make sure they know each other's names and be sure that you welcome them. And then my recommendation is that you actually the first time you meet with the kids, you play a little name game so that you're sure everybody knows it. And then you let them set positive expectations for learning, for being learners. So they can't make a rule that says, no shouting, but they might say, we're going to talk quietly. But a small number of kind of concise rules, like a really simple thing might be like, be safe, be kind, and be a learner. And then if somebody is not doing one of those things, which you can fit almost anything under that, you can say to them, "Oh, that doesn't look safe. You need to stop doing that." Or you're not being a learner when you're saying, "Oh, I already know that." So something simple like that. Um, be sure to ask lots of open-ended questions for the kids because what you want to get them doing is thinking and talking like a scientist. So you want to say when they have an answer to something or they have a proposition to make about why this is happening. Why do you think that? Tell me more. Can you explain to me more about what you think is going on? Okay, so that you get them really they can't just state something like it's true and doesn't matter why, because as a scientist, they have to be able to back that up, okay? And I've worked with mostly lower L kids, but they're very, very effective to say to them, oh, now you're thinking like a scientist, sometimes when they don't even know they are. An example is when we walk with the kids through the woods in Kensington, there are trees that have blown over, and there are some trees that were dead, but they got cut off, with a saw. And I say to the first graders, well, what do you think? Did that tree fall down or did it get cut down? And then when they notice that it's got a flat surface, I say, see, now you're thinking like a scientist because you noticed that. And then we see another one where it's all jaggedy. Oh, see, same thing. So, and and if they ask a question, that's a good question. Let's see if we can figure that out. Okay. So high expectations right from the beginning. Telling is not teaching. School age children will not learn just from you telling them or reading to them, um, some information. They really you need to get what are they starting from? One of the big things about teaching science to elementary age children is they do come in with a lot of their own preconceived scientific notions, and you want to so whatever your topic is that you're coaching, you want to feel them out for what's their background knowledge, maybe before you even start, you know, going into, well, here's what we need to learn as we're going on. And it doesn't really matter if it's a building thing or if it's something with scientific memorization or experimentation, because either way, you want to know where are they coming from, and then you can keep a list of questions that they have, and possibly if when you start to find answers, you could write the answers too, just and sort of pull it out like a chart when you're working with them. See, we had this question and now we found out this. Okay, so keep a list of questions. All right. Um, Number 3 is you have to get up and do. So when I said telling is not teaching, the kids learn in many ways, but they really have to move. They have to make connections with something else. So sometimes eating something in particular that somehow will sends a message to their brain, makes a little link between, oh yeah, remember that day that we had oranges for our snack and we were learning about, I don't know, cylinders or something, um, so do something with them. Some interesting ideas, because they will want to move and they will need to move, are things like letting them write a rap about what they know, letting them make up a song. So lots of movement. And sometimes, even if you're doing something, sitting down and where they're more or less sort of taking it in, there may be a child in your group, and you might or might not know this from your own kids, because sometimes it depends on their personality. They might actually remember things better if you let them pace back and forth. Or if you're practicing with them after school, go outside and make them run the playground like 3 times and then go back in and sit down. Because there's been a lot of studies that memory in the brain of young kids is the more movement, the better for them to remember. So, and the last thing for telling is not teaching is to be sure to have fun with them. So there's lots of ways to do this and have fun when you're working with kids. And that's the experience that we want them to have. It depends on your school and the kids in your group, how they'll feel. Like, are they doing this? I mean, as a board, we're really sort of working towards kids experiencing being scientists and as an exciting and fun thing to do. Not so much, oh yeah, I got a medal, as I really learned something new. So having fun with them and checking with them. Are we doing this just so that we'll be number one in the out of 40 schools? And see, they need to right away. You don't have to talk to them about it a lot, but with 40 schools, you know that the chances, not everyone is going to go home with a medal, but they're all going to learn something new and enjoy it and know something for the future that's going to help them. Okay. All right. Best practices for teachers. Kids have a limited attention span, and you know this because you're parents. Um, one of the rules of thumb is they can really only listen, without doing something, for as many minutes as years old they are. So if they're 7-year-olds, 7 minutes. If they're 10-year-olds, 10 minutes. That's it. You have to change up the activity after that. So you're going to want to plan things in chunks where there's some change going on of what they're doing. And that's the second thing, says the chunk the information. Once you know what your event is and what they need to learn how to do or learn about, take that information and break it into smaller chunks, that so that like every week when you meet them, they'll learn something just big enough for them to remember. Not like, don't try to do it all at one week. And you know what I forgot when we were talking about how to do it is, for a lot of kids, making their own guide. Like the Feathered Friends kids, they would like look up the birds and either find a picture or draw a picture, but then write their own. Oh, this bird likes to live in pine trees. This bird eats seeds. This, and doing that is another way to not just tell them, but have them. It helps their memory. Okay. So multiple intelligences is, you will see in a group of kids, some kids are auditory learners. They're really happy listening. Some kids are very visual. They want to look at a videotape, or they want, some kids need to do it, touch it with their own hands. You need to sort of make sure that the activities that you do meet them where they're at, because that's the most effective way to get them to be able to remember what they're trying to learn. So, and their hands on it. When I started out being a coach, there is so much stuff online that you can find. You can go to the National Science Olympiad um, sites, and or you can even like one time I googled water rockets, and you come up with all these things that tell you how different kids solved the problem, how they worked it out. And there's also like YouTube's then, oh, here's what we did, how we built our rocket. So you can use those kinds of resources, but there were also activities. So you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do for an activity. Maybe look and see. And the other thing is, oh, I didn't move the slide, sorry. Some resources that I've been learning more and more about. The Ann Arbor District Library has a huge um, collection, not just of books, but of kits that have things in them. So if that, like specific to what you're learning, there's ones about birds, there's ones about plants and how they grow. There's musical ones. There's all kinds. So you might want to go looking, or even talk to the reference librarian and say, like they have these drawers with big maps if you're going to do map, reading with the kids. The Science Olympiad website, and also just on YouTube if you haven't done this before. I mean, you want to check it out before you do it. And also, you have to make sure if you're working with the kids in school that you have an open site because some schools block YouTube. Um, so you may have to download it beforehand or whatever. But and just Google um, how to make a paper airplane that will do loops, or whatever it is. It's fairly easy nowadays to put in a question like that and get some examples back. Okay, so those are some of the resources. The other thing that's a really good resource is all of you with each other. If you don't know about it, you need to go to wesoscience.com. Is that right? Oh, .org. I'm sorry, .org. wesoscience.org. We have a big website. It is going to have everything on it. So it's going to have the descriptions of the events. It's going to have lists of resources particular to your event. It also, we have a section that's a blog. So whenever one of you, if you have a question that you need to get answered, you send it into wesoscience@gmail.com, and we send it to the supervisor. The supervisor answers it and will send you back the answer, but we will post on the blog the question and the answer so that all the other coaches who didn't send that question in are going to see that information and know, oh, okay, that helps me to know about this. So, and that the blog, you can actually sign up to get like notices specific to your event when something gets posted that has your event tagged on it. So that's a really good resource.
Name is Sally, and on the day of Science Olympiad, you'll see me all over the place. I ricocheted all over. I don't know how many of you have seen me at Science Olympiad. Okay, so I'm ricocheting all over, meeting and greeting everyone. So Jane has given you some tools, new coaches, in terms of how to get the kids interested in coaching, being prepared, giving them opportunity to do a lot of hands-on stuff, um, and just resources that's going to be really helpful for you as a coach. So my presentation is going to help you with the behavior and disruption. So what are they all about? Okay, so when the kids come into you, we have some of the kids are going to end up with energy release. Okay, they've been in class all day. Um, they don't want to do the work with the teachers are giving them. So they get to you and you're like, oh, another form of teaching. I don't want to be here. Let's be real. Okay, we're parents. We know what our kids are. We come home, they come home and we say homework and they go, no, I have no homework. So energy release. They may be hungry after school, um, tired. They need the attention. They want you to recognize them. That ties right back into Jane's presentation where she says, acknowledge the kids. Know their names, use their names. They'll be upset, sleepy, scared, or nervous. Science Olympiad activities can be, scary for kids. They walk in, they're excited, but then they're scared. It's like us going into a job for the first time. We're scared. Let's be real, right? You don't know what to expect, but you hope everything goes well. Um, it may be too difficult for them. Okay, so not all students are at the same level. Okay, some of our activities can be challenging. So that first lesson, just try to simplify it as best as you can, establish your rules so that it does not scare them too much and they don't think it's difficult. So you don't want to give them the most difficult thing first. okay, where they're like, oh, what have I done? I'm not going to do this. I'm sorry. I want to get out of here. Bored. Some kids, because of the ability level, you will have to modify it. So you will probably have to teach some skill that some of the kids don't have. And for the kids who are advanced, they may think it's boring and they may end up engaging in behaviors. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a possibility of. And bullied. Um, Sometimes I'm just going to pick on this cute little guy here. I'm not going to put you on any spot. But he's over here, and I walked in, and I want to be this. I am one of the bored one. I know what the coach is already telling me. So guess what? I'm going to bully him a little bit, pick at his hair, or pull his piece of paper away from him to distract him. You know, he may have actually come in to your session after school where someone has picked on him all day and he's just so tired. So, yes, there's a possibility of him being bullied and he just wants to, hey, I want the attention. I want everybody to know what's going on with me. So, just keep that FYI in the back of your head. Some possible solutions. Okay. For the hungry kids or for all the kids, you give them a snack. You can assign each one a task. You have a group of 4 kids or you have a group of 3 kids. Plan ahead of time so that each kid, after you assess, mental assessment of where each one are, give each one something to do. And by doing that, that's going to give everybody a belonging, a place, a team working concept, which they would actually flourish together because, um, like in any organization, if you step on everybody's toes, it doesn't go very well. So you just need to give everybody their space within the group, and that's definitely reduce some behaviors. So you have kids and you've tried everything you think possible. After all, you're a parent and you've tried things with your kids, and then you decide, okay, I'm going to do the same thing with my group, and it does not work. Your first step, and this is something you have to check with your head coach, make sure that he or she is comfortable with it. Contact the parents and ask them to volunteer, to commit once during the session. That means this week Jane is going to be here. Next week Bob is going to come in. So the same parents doesn't come in all the time. And then when that parent is with you, they can just either observe you, um, or you can give them something to do to review the lessons that you have actually done. Um, Brain gym is another thing that is very effective as a distractor. It reduces behaviors. Um, Head coaches and principals, you need to check with your head coach and the principal, but you're going through your head coaches. What you're going to do is you're going to ask if I have contacted a parent and the kid is still misbehaving, what do I do? Do I send the kid to the principal's office? Do I call the principal to come in if the principal is available after school? Or what should I do? And that is something you need to check with your head coaches so that you are on the same page with them. Um, Teach the concept and then do an activity. That reduces a lot of anxiety for kids. So you have different levels in your group. So the kids who is at the lower level, okay, and the higher level and at level, you go ahead 3 seconds and you give the concept. And then you follow that concept up with an activity. Does that make sense? So what you're doing is you're not giving them time to just sit there and say, I don't understand what it is. You're quickly following through with an activity so that they can understand the concept better. And please, please keep at the back of your head, not every kid is going to understand what you're saying the first time you say it. Some kids, it's repetition, repetition, repetition. You may actually have to send things home with parents, and or you can communicate via email with parents, handouts, packet. If you have packet, you can send it ahead of time, so the next week the student comes in, then they have had exposure with it. This is where it's a partnership with parents at home also. So inviting parents to come, inviting parents to participate and go over materials with you, with the kids while they're at home, it's a great way. They're driving in the car, make flashcards. And that would sort of help the anxiety of when they're with the group. Um, use behavior plan. WESO does not discriminate against special needs kids participating in Science Olympiad. So you need to check with your head coach. If you notice there's a behavior in your group, you need to ask your head coach, does this person have an IEP? Okay? If that person has an IEP and all of this has to go through head coach, and the head coaches have to get permission from the parents in order to share that information with you. Okay? Some kids do have a behavior plan, and that is the behavior plan you would use for that particular child. Okay, it may be a good plan you can use for everyone. Okay, so the behavior plan, check with your head coach for any students who have an IEP with a behavior plan. Another effective way to help reduce some of the anxiety and anxiousness of the kids is breathing exercises. You know, um, you've often hear, oh, a lot of people the phrase take a deep breath, calm down, you're okay, just breathe calmly, inhale, exhale kind of thing. That's very helpful also. um, Breaks, restroom breaks, snack breaks, you know um, group breaks, that's another way. If you let the kids know ahead of time that they're going to get a break, they're going to be really excited. So let's finish this first. Always use the concept, we'll do these things first and then we'll get a break. Kids love that, regardless of what age, even us. I mean, is there anyone in the room who does not like a break? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Plan a reward at the end of coaching. Say, okay, if you show up, when you show up and you participate and you concentrate and you um, learn the material and don't disrupt anyone, even if you disrupt, you got to be positive. If you're disrupting and it's related to the lesson, make sure it really is the answer. So you can reword things so differently for kids. Try to use their own language. Um, that's the tricky part. If you use highfalutin words, sometimes you forget. As coaches and teachers and parents, you forget, the level of the kids, and you forget like how difficult it was for you to actually learn something new. So don't forget how difficult it is. Okay, so keep that in the back of your mind when you're working with the kids. All right. So to recap and to just, finalize my piece of the presentation is be patient with the kids. Okay. Remember that, you know, disruptions will happen. Remember that we're all there. And trust me, there'll be time that you will come up with something in that event where you have to learn it yourself. Okay. And most of all, I want you to think fun. Make it fun. This is your moment. This is your 1 hour or half an hour or 2 hours a week to spend some really cool time with kids and enjoy it. Okay.
All right, I'm going to wrap up. My name is Nancy. I am not an educator. I am a scientist. Started off on WESO a very long time ago.
My son was in second grade, and I said, well, I'll volunteer to coach this one event he wants to do. Or if you can't find a coach for circuits, I can probably do that as well. I ended up coaching both of those events and then a third one for some reason. But it's been fun. And I went from an event coach 3 years, head coach of my school for 3 years, and now I've been a board member for 8 years. So what I'm going to share with you is some of the things that I've learned from my personal experience and from observing as a board member at workshops. We get to observe how a lot of coaches interact with their teams, and you probably won't see me as often on Olympiad Day because I do scoring, and so I spend a lot of time back behind the tables that you can't go past, or in a back room dealing with the scores as they're coming in. But I can see, oh, yeah, I like the way that coach did that, and what do you know, his team did very well, or her team did very well. I have this broken down into a couple type events, and in my mind, and then in a lot of the board's mind, we kind of break things up into things that are academic events, where there may be a lot of memorization and learning, and hopefully some hands-on. But things like our birding event or In Bloom, where you gotta learn a lot, and then building events, things like Zippity Doo Dah, like On Target, um, barge building, that you learn the science, but the majority of the event is a building event. Um, these events are good opportunities to teach the scientific method. The kids will remember that long after they've forgotten exactly how they make their little barge out of clay and how many nickels will fit in it and things like that. But they will take the opportunity of, this is how I do an experiment, this is how I make discoveries on their own, with them after that. So what you want the kids to do is do experiments that are kind of guided by you. Let them come up with the idea, but the concept should be guided by you. You want to brainstorm on what some of the variables are. Some events have a lot of variables, some have not so many. And this is important, have them keep track of their results somehow. Make a lab notebook if you can. Their lab notebook may be just a few sheets of paper stapled together, but make sure that they've recorded what they've done. The scientific method, you're going to start with a hypothesis. You're going to gather equipment or materials to do your experiment. You're going to do the experiment. You're going to record the data. You're going to analyze it. And then you're going to come to a conclusion, and then you loop right back around. And all of these, you want to make multiple attempts, particularly when you're starting off on an event. If the kids are doing something like On Target and they're learning how to operate that launcher, they are going to pull this thing one way and another, and it's not going to launch the same way every time. You should be looking at it and seeing what they're doing. Same thing for like the aerodynamics event with the paper airplane. Part of it is they've got to learn how to fly that airplane. So they can't take just one attempt at it and say, oh, that one only went 8 feet. Have them do it 3 times or 5 times and make an average and see what that result is going to be. Maybe have a contest to see who can get the most consistent results. Younger kids especially will do an awful lot for a sticker or a gold star. If you can get everything within 10% or something like that, they will try very hard to control the things that they can control on their own in order to get that consistency sticker. So this is after they make a baseline. Do the hypothesis on a change, but the kids will often want to change more than one thing at a time. And this, you can run into a problem. There are a lot of attractive things to change in some events. I was looking at On Target. Do we have any On Target coaches here? On Target has something like 11 or 12 variables associated with it. So, the kids will make one missile and then they'll go on to do something entirely different. The problem is it's really hard to tell which of the things they've changed actually has an impact on what's going on. And even worse, maybe things they changed did have impacts, but they counterbalanced each other. So if you change more than one variable, you can have confusion. They can maybe think of this with a seesaw. Your schools may have a piece of equipment that looks like this. We used to have an event on force and motion, and we actually gave every school something like this, one of these lever arm balances. You can have that balanced, with two weights on either side, and the kids will say, okay, let's do an experiment, we'll make a change. We're going to change both the distance and the mass and see what happens. We're going to move the right side closer, and we're going to make it heavier. Well, when you do that, it still balances. So the kids in their mind may be saying, well, those didn't make any difference. One of them tended to tip it to the right, the other one tended to tip it to the left, and kind of Murphy's third law of science Olympic practices. If the kids can pick the values such that the variables will cancel each other out, they will. The odds are against you, but it will happen. All right. So you want to do one variable at a time, and that's something that's going to be a little bit hard for the kids to do. But maybe give them some examples like that, or something you can think of for your event to show that it's important to only do one at a time. What are the new results when they've changed that one variable? Share it with the group. There are no bad results. They may have changed something, and it may have made that paper airplane going from flying 8 feet to only flying 4 feet, and it kind of nosedive right into the ground in front of them. That's not a bad result. That's a result of something that doesn't work. There are a lot of things that don't work, and finding out what those are important too. It's okay for the kids to work as individuals at the start of the season. A lot of our events have teams of 2 or 3, and they can all build and come up with something, and it's really fun to see them share what they learned. And maybe as a coach, you need to go out and say, well, look what Sue did right here. She learned that if we folded the back of the airplane wings up, that it gave a little straighter flight or something like that. And you can share that to the group or have her explain it to the group, but it's really fun to see the kid kind of have ownership of, look at this idea and look at what I discovered. So as long as they're sharing it, it's good. And they can do things on their own. But as you're getting close to the Olympiad day, they have to come together as a team. So you guys need to pull out all of the good ideas that they've discovered, bring them together, and make sure that they're working as a team. Look at how many practices you have. Maybe the last 2 or 3 should be trial runs for the Olympiad. No more experimenting at that point, only making minor changes and seeing what tasks are smoother or more repeatable. The best approach is one that's repeatable. You don't want to push the envelope. The kids will be nervous on Olympiad day, and teams that are nervous tend not to operate to perfection. And teams that don't work well together because they haven't worked together in practice frequently do poorly. From the academic type events, you've heard some tips from our other speakers on flashcards and playing games, and those things work very well. It's best for you to do a rough lesson plan for the entire time. Are you going to have 6 practices, 8, 10, 12, and kind of chunk things down into, circuit wizardry. For this week, we're going to learn about resistors. Next week, we're going to learn about the potentiometer. The week after that, we're going to learn about capacitors, and kind of just introduce one new subject a week, and look at your practice and how it's all going to come together. Try to incorporate examples whenever possible, and movement time, as I said, is important. You want the kids to get up and move around and have some activity. Have them come up with questions or examples. Homework is okay on some of these events. You don't want to give them 5 hours worth of homework, but for Estimania, maybe have them go home and come back to the group with something that they've got to estimate. Estimate the perimeter of this Lego thing that I've built at the base, or estimate how much this orange weighs or something, or the kid knows the answer and they're bringing it back. Related playtime, if possible, is good. For circuits, I would bring in my kids' snap circuit kits, and they would get to build all of these things that buzzed and whirred and made noise, and they would have fun doing like that. And I could look at what they were doing, and when it didn't work, we would talk about, well, maybe there's a short circuit somewhere. Let's see if we can find it. Final practices, the week or two before, should really be geared towards what's going to happen on Olympiad Day. The kids are all nervous and excited, and if you haven't been to a WESO, it's just there's a whole lot of energy in the room, and the whole building is really buzzing. Adding some familiarity with what the kids will experience going into the event will help them do so calmly and let them show what they've really learned. Try to simulate the Olympiad. Start with the kids out in the hallway. Have them go into their room and sit down at the desk as a group and take their test or build their structure without interruptions. So you are not interrupting or doing anything there. Make sure everyone knows their role. And that can be from if you have a group of 3 people taking a test with a pencil, who's actually doing the writing. There are arguments in rooms about it's my turn to hold the pencil or I'm supposed to do this. Make sure the kids know what they're supposed to do ahead of time. Work that out in the practice. Stress and praise teamwork when they're working together as team. We have seen teams that really know their stuff that really have had meltdowns in the room over as adults what really seems like something trivial, and it never ends well when there's a disagreement among the team. Oops. And finally, as I said, science is fun. I like this quote from Carl Sagan: "Every child starts out as a natural-born scientist." You should have fun. The kids should have fun. They want to be there. This is a voluntary activity for them and for you. And it was really exciting for me to learn about a whole different events and keep coming back and hopefully helping to inspire the next generation of scientists.
I was trying to see if it's on our website because I was going to read to you. I know we used to have it, but there it's a very short, but WESO code of conduct for the students. And as you're studying, one of the things to just remind them as they're going along is that, like, while they're working, they can't bother other, at the Olympiad, they can't bother other teams by making too much noise or trouble. But they're supposed to be doing their best, being honest about what's going on. It's a thing that they should be proud of who they are, and that they just really need to, use really good manners, be truthful, be friendly.